Welcome to our masterclass. How do you know what you know? Knowing the starting point is half the battle. And I'm going to take you through that this afternoon. We are starting a new path of learning. It may be something you've been interested in for a long time, or it may be something required by work or school. The first step is always to assess what you already know about the subject. You may think this is silly because you've never studied anything like this subject. Think of this new area as an extension of yourself. There's absolutely nothing completely new to you. You see, we've been conditioned to think of ourselves as empty vessels because we are taught in traditional schools that as if the mind was a blank slate. For the mind to be a blank slate, there'd have to be some erasing done. Let me explain. Your mind's total purpose is to make sense of the world around you. It takes data. Your conscious mind will collect about 2,000 bits per second. It collects from what your senses tell it. It translates figurative information into concrete information every time you read or work on mathematics. It weighs information by comparing it to information you have categorized and stored in your brain. If, for instance, someone says, the sky is pink, your mind would process that and either accept it, reject it, or ignore it based on what you know. With children, they would reject it because they've never seen a pink sky. Adults might conclude that this information is coming from someone experiencing a sunrise or a sunset. Those who ignore it may be seeing the same sky and thinking that the information isn't exactly world news. The information that this conscious mind uses as a comparison is random information contained in the subconscious mind. Now, the subconscious mind collects a staggering 4 billion bits per second. It collects and stores it like people who subscribe to National Geographics. It doesn't evaluate, but it does categorize the information. It will remember old coffee ads, silly stories and jokes, movie plots, conversation, the smell of French toast in the morning. So when someone says the sky is pink, the conscious mind goes to the subconscious mind and looks for pictures of a pink sky or people talking about pink skies or science fiction stories about pink skies. And it feeds it back to the conscious, which then evaluates the statement. There actually is no empty space in that mind of yours. So how does this help you? If you realize that most everything in your mind is related to everything you've ever experienced and everything you ever will experience, why not use this to help you learn something? If you wanted to learn a new language, the alphabet may be different, but you already communicate with people. The first phrases you learned were probably related to something you needed to do in your regular life. How do you say your name? How do you address others? How do you ask basic questions? Do you think these phrases will be unused in a new language? Of course not. Do you want to learn how to build furniture? Did you ever play with Legos or blocks as a child? You already see in 3 dimensions. You can already transfer pictures and ideas from plans and descriptions on paper. You know how to measure and may be familiar with some of the tools required. So, first of all, how old are you? That seems irrelevant, doesn't it? But let's look at it. Think of all the things that you've done over your lifetime. I bet you have tons of stories. There are vacations and personal relationships, challenges you faced, books you've read, TV shows, and movies you've seen. I bet you can remember the lyrics to your favorite songs. Do you remember the first song you played on your instrument, or those flutophones and recorders you had in elementary school? What's your favorite sports story? Was it one that you played in or one that you watched? What would you consider your favorite game? Has this favorite changed over your lifetime? Can you remember your dreams? Do you have a scrapbook? Do you write in a journal? Do you ever look through your pictures? The point is this: every single one of those things contributes to the person you are now. This means that everything you learn from now on will have some basis of recognition and give you your life experiences, thoughts, and discoveries. You may learn that you don't learn anything in a vacuum. You know what I did there? Because it's actually nothing in a vacuum. Everything new becomes integrated into your vast database of your mind and finds new life there. The things that you learned about physics in your music class are applied to your gymnastics routine. The routine then influences how you understand ballet. The ballet causes you to investigate the Sun King of France and the invention of pointe shoes. That causes you to compare dancing on pointe to foot wrapping in China. And that brings you back to the physics you learned in music, and round it goes. One of my students was trying to understand sound waves, and somehow we got started talking about differential calculus. What was she studying? Voice. I was informed that since I was a music major in school, I should take the easiest math. So I took calculus. Okay, well, take the easiest English. So I took Old English literature. Are you out of your mind? Well, at least take the least complex history. So I took Renaissance history, which included the arts, culture, migration, economy, and science of the era. They told me it would affect my grade point. 3.67 isn't too bad, is it? Why did I take those classes? Well, because they're related to each other. That's the point, though. Every class is related. Every experience, every investigation into whatever piques your curiosity is related. So why do you want to learn something new? Now, these are a few of the reasons, but I know you have your own. Here's an idea for you. When you embark on your new journey in learning something new, here are some questions to ask yourself. What do I want to learn? And then, just as importantly, why do I want to learn this? Once you have those two questions answered, go on to this next step. What have I ever done or learned that is related to this subject? Now take a look at the list. We have physical and mental actions, games and sports, reading, writing, poetry, artistic endeavors, mathematical and scientific studies, dance, analysis, martial arts, music. All the things on the left relate to the things on the right and can be used to learn any new material. These are not separate things. These are integrated. This is something to remember. Then, once you have seen all of those things working together, ask yourself, what results am I looking for? Because the results are what you're going to learn from the study that you have and how it will impact your life. So I have some case studies. Let's meet Don. What did I know about Don going into this class? Well, he's 61 years old. He was a colonel in the Air Force and a navigator. He was married and he had children that were grown and out of the house. He had 2 dogs and he was very much involved in county politics. What did he want to learn? Piano. What did Don know about music and piano before getting into the teaching relationship with me? Well, according to him, nothing. This is actually the most difficult part of the lesson, explaining to the client or the student that they know much more than they think they do. We then did a gentle assessment. It was just a conversation, so not a test, and an introduction to how we will learn during his lessons. So I asked him, why piano? He thought it was pretty, and he liked that he could play a song and the background at the same time. Why now? Because his friend bought him 5 lessons with me. She actually said to him, "Get off your butt and get started, Don. Quit putting it off." So he figured, why not? The next question kind of threw him for a loop. Do you read maps? What kind of maps? Topographic maps, road maps, any kind of map? Yes. Then you can read music. Now, I knew he was a navigator, so I used maps as an example. How can you tell if an engine is running smoothly just by listening? Was my next question. Well, he answered, you listen for sputters and breaks in the rhythm. It's the same in music. So you now know how to read music and count. At this point, he's surprised because he hasn't played a note yet, and he already understands music reading and counting. We learned note positions on the staff with both left and right hands as if he was finding coordinates on a map. He listened to the music to see if he had a regular beat and worked on division and subdivision of the sounds. He learned to tell a lot of the rhythms by the sound. We discovered later that he had an excellent ear for music and could tell right away if he made a mistake. But at the same time, if the mistake he made sounded good, he wouldn't hear it. See, if there was a dissonance in the music and he played something that was harmonious instead, he wouldn't hear that he'd made the mistake. We used his map reading skills to discover the mistake and then trained his ear to hear the dissonance as a precursor to the musical effect instead. How's he doing now? He plays Clementi, Mozart, boogie woogie, jazz, and blues. He's learned all of his 12 major scales. He has a pianissimo that would bring you to tears. Well, let's take a look at Marla. Now, what did I know about Marla going into the teaching relationship? She was working on a master's degree in sociology. She was over 30 and had some experience in the schools. She was taking statistics as a required class for her degree. So what did she want to learn? She wanted help in her beginning statistics class because she was having problems on the tests. What did Marla know about statistics going into this program? It was math. It was hard. There were charts and graphs and lots of formulas and terms she was unfamiliar with, and she knew she didn't like it. Well, why statistics? Well, in social work, the only way to compare people to the norm is to use some sort of statistical analysis. Now, as a side note, if she didn't pass statistics, she couldn't get the degree. She spent $150 on the class, $60 on the calculator, $60 on the book, and $250 on her tutor. How should we approach this situation? Well, sociology is based on comparisons. It concentrates on behaviors, living conditions, mental and emotional issues, and generally the development, structure, and functioning of a human society. We looked into all the ways she's currently using statistics in her life. She didn't think she did. So I asked her what her favorite color was. She said, aquamarine. But I remember her answer 30 years later is a testament to her unusual choice. Then I asked her how much of her wardrobe consisted of that color. She thought about half. Then I asked her how many other people she knew liked that color. She had to think about that. How would she find out? Then I asked her how many people she knew. She was taken aback by that question. Would you ask everyone you know what their favorite color is to discover how rare your choice is, or would you want to find another way? She wanted to find another way. Well, we could take a sample and then extrapolate from that. So she decided she'd go to her favorite coffee shop and ask the first 20 people that came in after her what their favorite color was. She knew most of the people that had coffee there. Then we thought maybe we should limit that to just the women. She got herself a clipboard and did the experiment. She did this because she was curious, not as part of an assignment for the class. When she came back for her next session, she told me that most of the women she spoke to stuck to a single word colors such as pink or yellow, not descriptive colors like sky blue or cherry red. I asked her which was the most common color, and much to my surprise, it was blue. Then I asked her what the average color was. See, the first measurements you have to establish is what is normal. And most people think average is normal. This is not the case in statistics. She couldn't answer the question. She said, well, if you mix all the colors together and according to some ratio, you'd still get some kind of icky gray. Average then would not be a good measurement. What would? She looked up the word in her statistics book and the light popped out. She decided to get a handle on the vocabulary first and then figure out the equations. After a few sessions, she discovered it wasn't the numerical part or even the language part of the class that held her back. It was the context and the relevance. Once she got a handle on how the material related to her field of study, then her curiosity took over. She still had a tendency to leave out the most important part about finding out what you know. And that was, what question did they want her to answer? She tended to start putting data points into her calculator and begin hitting buttons instead of looking at the question and seeing what she needed to find out to discover the answer. She did pass the class, but most importantly, she learned to like statistics. My last case study is a study of Bo and Riley. What did I know about Bo and Riley before they started studying with me? Well, not much. Bo and Riley were in the same school as my children. They played most of the sports in high school, and their parents were well known in the community. What did they want to study? Football. What did they already know about football? Well, they understood the rules and the plays. They were comfortable with positions they played. They were students of the game. in that they watched tapes of their games and studied their opponents. They had a basic understanding on how to improve their performance. But why did they come to me? After all, I had a ballet studio and I had been teaching ballet in that location for 3 years. Well, that year, I offered a football boot camp for a reasonable price, and they didn't have to leave town or stay away from home to do it. The boot camp was 6 weeks, once a week sessions. On our gentle assessment, they talked about weightlifting they'd done and some of the drills they'd mastered and some of the tactics they used to play their positions. We started with conditioning. What kind of core strength did they think they needed? Well, they thought it was pretty important, but not exactly critical. Where did they think they needed the most strength? Both said the arms and upper body. What other critical skills did they need? Well, Riley, the receiver, said speed. Bo, the defender, said quickness. What did they do already that improved those skills? Well, they looked at each other and said, running drills mostly. I asked them if they had little brothers or sisters at home. I have a tendency to ask questions that seem that not related to what we're talking about. So they replied intelligently, what? Did you ever have to cross a floor littered in Legos? Oh. What kind of balance exercises did they do? Did they ever go to ice skating or ride a skateboard? Both of them said that they had. And both of them were used to doing the main calisthenics that you had to do. So they knew about sit-ups, but the ones they did in my boot camp were different sit-ups. Both understood push-ups, but the ones they did in boot camp were different push-ups. When they worked on balance by standing on one foot and aligning the center of the body and then pushing up onto their toes, their average balance time was about 5 seconds at first, and toward the end of boot camp, 30 seconds. Then we did en croix jumping jacks, so that jumping jacks in a cross form. So the feet started in second position, then first, and then fourth, and then first, and then repeated, alternating the front foot in fourth position. So they were jumping jacks, but they were different jumping jacks. This is where the fun came in. After they've been exposed to variations on exercises they already knew, they came up with variations to other exercises that worked aspects of strength, speed, and agility. They were starting to relate what they knew to a new situation. Now, after that first session, they had problems standing up straight and limped out of the studio, but they came back the next week. There was marked improvement. They used what they knew about exercises from their time in PE and other football camps to learn the new exercises. But now they could feel areas that they hadn't worked before. They were becoming more aware of their center of gravity, the essential need for core strength and balance and push-up exercises. They eagerly did the Legos on the floor run. They worked on jumping to get their height and discovered that a gait made them faster off the line. They increased their shoulder and arm strength, and this made the defender harder to catch fast and made the receiver harder to catch. We went into one-on-one strategies and tactics on the 4th week. The defender learned how to place his body in a way that would herd his mark into the center of the field where the rest of the defenders were. The receiver then learned how to avoid these herding techniques. These tactics they knew from experience on the field, but now recognized how they could take advantage given the types of training they'd received in boot camp. When the official high school football camp started, and Bo and Riley started on the exercises and drills, they were the only ones at the end of the week that weren't obviously in pain. Bo was the only defender none of the other players could get around, and Riley was the only receiver that couldn't be stopped. And the only time either one could be matched was when they were up against each other. The coach asked all their teammates which football camp they went to. Some of the boys had been to a camp at the nearby college. Some went to a high school program offered by former players. Bo and Riley, who were obviously the last to be asked as they were the number one offensive and defensive players of the camp, sheepishly looked at each other and said they went to the ballet teacher downtown. The coach was dumbfounded. The point is this: although there were others that had completed a boot camp at other facilities, the exercises and drills weren't much different than what they had done before. Bo and Riley took what they knew, added some awareness, and learned some ways to extend their basic knowledge to how they moved around in their world, not just the football field. It made them more conscious about the things they were already doing that would enhance their performance in their positions. Most of the boys on the team had very similar experiences in life, but did not apply what they knew outside of their football environment to help them within it. So what I'd like you to understand is that you will always know more than you think. The secret is looking at everything you do in another light.